What's up, fantasy managers? Welcome back to another episode of the First Pitch Podcast brought to you by PitcherList.com. My name is Jake Crumpler, and I'll be your host for this episode of the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Crumpler, and you can find all of my work at crumplerbaseball.com. Let's dive into everything baseball related from yesterday, Wednesday, March 19th. We'll start it off, as always, by talking about the injuries, which are the most notable news at this point in the season. The most notable injury we had involved starting pitcher Jared Jones, who is unfortunately dealing with elbow discomfort, and he won't be able to make his final start of spring training later this week. He is seeking a second opinion to hopefully avoid going under the knife or having to deal with a long IL stint, but right now an IL stint altogether seems highly likely. So we will likely be seeing Jared Jones begin the season on the IL, which really sucks. I was super pumped for a big breakout season from Jones. Hopefully this doesn't discredit that altogether, but we will see a delay to the start of his season. Right now, it looks like Carmen Mlodzinski is going to be the fifth starter for the Pirates, but don't count out that one of the top prospects like Thomas Harrington or Bubba Chandler gets a shot at being the opening day fifth starter for the Pirates in 2025. The next injury we had also involves a starting pitcher, and that's Ranger Suarez, who is dealing with a stiff back. The Phillies ordered tests, and those will take a couple of days, so we will know more in a couple of days Ranger Suarez's status. Right now, Taijuan Walker would line up to replace him in the rotation. He did not have a good pitching outing yesterday to make his case for being in the rotation, allowing 6 runs in 3 2/3 innings yesterday. So Taijuan Walker not doing his best to make a case to be in the rotation to replace Ranger Suarez dealing with a stiff back. The last injury we have involves starting pitcher Clark Schmidt, who is still dealing with a sore shoulder, and he won't be built up to 75 to 80 pitches to start the season, which likely means he could start the season on the IL. It could mean he only misses 1 or 2 turns through the rotation, and that would mean Carlos Carrasco would be the team's fifth starter, and he actually did the opposite of what Taijuan Walker did, and he had a great outing to make his case to be the team's fifth starter, tossing 5 scoreless innings, allowing just 2 hits and 1 walk while striking out 3. He induced just 3 whiffs with 24% CSW, so it doesn't really look like Carrasco deserved 5 shutout innings. Nonetheless, he's still able to go out there and get a lot of outs for the Yankees. So Carrasco still making a living throwing baseballs out there at his advanced age. Now we'll go look at some news, not injury related. We'll talk about the A's who finalized their rotation. Looks like they'll go with Luis Severino, Jeffrey Springs, JP Sears, Osvaldo Bido, and Joey Estes, with Mitch Spence pitching in the bullpen. So that's how the rotation sets. There's tons of young pitchers for the A's in their whole system right now, so expect that to change. I doubt Osvaldo Bido or Joey Estes make it through the whole season. I know there's lots of hope that Bido can break out after showcasing some stuff last year, but there's plenty of guys who will get their opportunities throughout the year. This isn't the final rotation for the A's for the entire season. A couple of roster moves involving 2021 first-round picks, as both Jordan Lawler and Brady House were optioned to the minors. Lawler plays for the Diamondbacks, and he's vying for shortstop, but they just extended their shortstop, Geraldo Perdomo, so Lawler's trying to fit his way wherever he can in that Arizona infield, but right now he's going to have to wait back in the minors. Same with Brady House. He's vying for third base with the Nationals. They're really not ready to compete yet, and Brady House still has some work to do in the minors, so he's back there, as well as Robert Hassel III. He was a 2020 first-round pick. He's still not ready to go. I'm pretty sure he was doing well in spring training, though I don't have the numbers to back that up. Robert Hassel III and Brady House both optioned to the minors by the Nationals. In terms of other optionings to the minors that were somewhat surprising with young players, the Red Sox optioned Vaughn Grissom, the second baseman, to the minors. He had been struggling at the plate and really wasn't getting going, and so that basically confirms that David Hamilton and Romy Gonzalez will platoon at the Keystone position to start the season, but I really do think that opens up a clearer path for Christian Campbell to come up early in the season, because David Hamilton and Romy Gonzalez aren't guys that are going to solidify themselves in the lineup or at second base and make it impossible for Campbell to come up. But Grissom was one of those guys because he, was such a big trade piece for Chris Sale. That is somebody they're relying on to at some point be an important contributor for this team. So if he entrenched himself at second base early in the season, it would be very difficult for Campbell to come up and actually make an impact in fantasy. So this is actually somewhat positive news for people who roster Campbell right now. Discussing a former second baseman, Joe Espada confirmed that Jose Altuve will play most of his games in left field this season. That means that Mauricio Dubon will likely get everyday at-bats at second base, but more importantly, I think it continues to open up a clear path for Cam Smith, who hit his fourth homer yesterday in a spring training game and is currently batting .419 with a 1371 OPS in spring. So Cam Smith doing all he can to crack this opening day roster. I really do think it's possible. I don't think Jake Myers and Chas McCormick have the outfield locked down, and second base with Mauricio Dubon, who's better used as a utility guy anyway. I don't think he's entrenched at second base, so I really wouldn't count out Cam Smith making the opening day roster for the Astros, and he's really looking like he's killing major league pitching, and this is a guy who was a first-round pick last season, so he's really, learning quickly how to hit in the major leagues. So Cam Smith looking like he could be a future star. We got our first update on George Kirby's shoulder inflammation. Not really exciting news to say, but at least we got some news to figure out where he is. If you're still doing drafts, this is great news. Kirby is set to play catch soon, and he did have a quote-unquote biologics injection in the shoulder, so hopefully that helps. They said he will stay at extended spring training for the next 3 weeks. I think he'll continue to play catch there, take it easy. And then he was quoted as saying, I'm hoping to get back up there by mid-April. I don't know where there is. Hopefully that means the major leagues and on a mound. That's George Kirby. Hopefully back in mid-April, though, to expect something more late April as the Mariners take it easy early on in the season so they can have, a full season of Kirby pitching healthy and hopefully in the playoffs as well. Our last bit of news comes from Torey Lovullo, who said he won't name a closer before the season starts. He's been hemming and hawing all season, but he says they'll roll with matching up at first. I still think AJ Puck is the guy to go with here. Justin Martinez going earlier than he is in drafts, but AJ Puck, superior pitcher in all aspects. It's just that he's a left-hander. I think that's the only reason why Lovullo won't name him. Really last season, for a majority of the season, almost greater than just the second half, Puck was the best reliever in baseball. The numbers are there to back it up. Sub-1 ERA, just incredible strikeout numbers as well. That's AJ Puck. I really think he's going to get the majority of the saves, and I don't think that's just going to be because Justin Martinez struggles or something like that. I really think Puck is just going to dominate so much that he's going to be the one they want to turn to for saves. Now we'll take a look at the notable performances from yesterday. Obviously, we just had one game that counted, as we had the final game of the Tokyo series between the Dodgers and the Cubs. Let's first look at the notable hitting performances, starting with the Cubs. Kyle Tucker got his first hit as a Cub, going 1 for 4 with a double, an RBI, and a walk. I don't see any reason for Tucker to slow down his fantasy production this year. He's been such a reliable guy throughout his career. I don't think changing cities or, changing lineups is going to have that much of an effect on a player of his caliber. So I would expect Kyle Tucker to continue to be an incredible fantasy producer for the Cubs and for your fantasy teams. The other notable Chicago Cub I'd like to note is John Birdie, who went 3 for 4 with a run and his second stolen base of the season already. Unfortunately, despite this incredible performance here against the Dodgers in Japan, John Birdie is likely to not maintain that second base role for the Cubs throughout the season. Nico Horner missed these 2 games. However, he is expected back for real opening day next Thursday, so that would mean Birdie would be back into a bench role. He is a guy that maybe can be counted on in super, super deep leagues because he can steal some bases. He's really fast, but he doesn't really have an everyday role for the Cubs. So John Birdie, likely not somebody you want to roster in fantasy, though if you did have him for these 2 games in Tokyo, that was a pretty smart move. A pair of steals and 3 hits in the second game. Pretty smart, big brain move there. Now let's discuss the Dodgers hitters. Of course, we got to start with Shohei Ohtani. He went 1 for 3 with a run and his first home run of the year. Obviously, an RBI came with that, and he got a pair of walks as well. One of them was intentional. The fans in Japan did not like that one, but they did like that home run, and he really got a lot of help from the fans in multiple regards in that with that home run, not just with their cheering and egging him on, but also because one of the fans reached over the fence and grabbed that home run and brought it back. And then they went for review, and the review booth was not going to overturn it, especially in Japan. I can't imagine the kind of riots we would have seen if they had overturned that home run, but they upheld it despite it obviously being pulled back by a fan. Nonetheless, Shohei Ohtani on the board for the season with his first home run. The Dodgers had 3 home runs in this game. The second one came from Tommy Edman, who went 1 for 5 with a run, a home run, and an RBI. It's sort of easy to forget how impactful a player Tommy Edman was after he missed last season, because this is a guy that in the past was a 15-30 threat. And playing for the Dodgers, if he gets in there every single day, or at least most of the time, and can get near the top of the lineup, he's also going to be a huge run producer. So Tommy Edman, if he lives up to his potential, could be a guy, batting 260 and above with 15 homers, 30 steals, and tons of runs or RBI, depending on where he's batting in the lineup. The third Dodger to homer was Kike Hernandez. He went 1 for 3 with a run, a home run, and 3 runs batted in. I really don't think he's going to be more than a role player, but he's certainly an option in deep NL-only leagues because he plays in an incredible lineup for the Dodgers, and he's pretty good against left-handed pitching. So if he is only in there against left-handed pitching and he's on your team, you're going to get pretty good rate stats in that regard. The counting stats may be lacking. And I do want to point out one spring training hitter that had a notable performance. Victor Scott II went 1 for 4 with a run, a home run, and an RBI. It's already his 3rd home run of the spring, and he's actually been killing it this spring, batting .359. Like I said, 3 home runs. He's got 5 steals as well and an 1149 OPS. But this is a guy who struggled at the plate last year at both AAA and the majors, but he's got tons of speed, and he's locked into everyday role in center field in St. Louis. So much speed. In fact, 94 stolen bases in the minors in 2023. That was one season, 94 stolen bases. So he's got an incredible ceiling. And if he can incorporate the power and just overall offensive abilities he's been showcasing in spring training, Victor Scott II could be a legit breakout candidate this season. Tons of speed there. All right, let's take a look at some of the notable starting pitching performances. We'll start with Roki Sasaki, who made his major league debut, tossing 3 innings, allowing 1 hit, 1 earned run. He walked 5 and struck out 3, inducing 5 whiffs with 18% CSW across 56 pitches. He threw 93% four-seamer and splitter, and if you tuned in yesterday, you'll remember that Shota Imanaga and Yoshinobu Yamamoto were 80% plus four-seamer splitter as well. So very common with these Japanese pitchers, seeing a lot of four-seamers and splitters. Very common. Sasaki, though, was absolutely electric despite clearly struggling with the 5 walks. He topped out at 101 miles per hour with the heater, and his splitter had so much downward movement. It literally looked like a curveball breaking. Like it did the hump thing that a curveball does too. It was incredible. That pitch is going to be ridiculous, but clearly the jitters got to him. I went on at length about how him being a Japanese guy pitching in his home country for his first game might take away the jitters. There was nothing behind that. They still got to him. His stuff was all over the place. He couldn't find the zone, but I think he'll be better in his next start. If the Dodgers keep their current rotation order, he would line up to face the Tigers next Saturday. So that's Roki Sasaki. Interesting major league debut. We got to see him control the pitches, but the stuff is clearly there. On the other side, Justin Steele went 4 innings, allowing 5 hits and 5 earned runs with 1 walk and 5 strikeouts. He induced 9 whiffs with 33% CSW across 67 pitches. He could not handle the Dodgers. He went 92% four-seamer slider. That's expected from Steele, not a guy with a deep arsenal, and that's sort of why he doesn't enter that upper echelon of aces despite having so much success across the past couple of years. The strikeouts aren't really there, and he's a guy who relies solely on those 2 pitches, and you can't really get as far as you can with multiple options, especially as a lefty. You could get crushed by right-handers, and that's what we saw in this one, as we saw Kike Hernandez and Tommy Edman take him deep from the right side. He left too many pitches over the middle of the plate, but I wouldn't lose faith in Steele. I still think he's going to be great moving forward, despite just the 2 pitches. Those 2 pitches are great. He knows how to spot them. He knows how to pitch them well. He's got a great defense behind him as well. I think the weird circumstances here in Japan early in the season, maybe he wasn't completely ready as well, only tossed 67 pitches, but but I think he's going to be better as he takes on the Diamondbacks next. So Justin Steele should be back on track as we get back on track to a normal regular season game. I'd also like to point out a notable spring training pitching matchup as Jacob deGrom made his second spring start, tossing 4 innings, allowing 4 hits with 2 earned runs and 2 walks and 3 strikeouts. He induced 10 whiffs with 30% CSW across 57 pitches, so he's working his way up. He should be ready for opening day. His fastball, though, only averaged 95.5. I know he's working his way up, but that is way down from what we expect from Jacob deGrom. This is a guy who used to average 99 miles per hour prior to his injury at his peak back in 2022. And even when he debuted last year, coming off the surgery in 2024, 97.3 miles per hour briefly last season. So Jacob deGrom, still some work to do to get up to that 97 miles per hour we want to see. I mean, if people remember, I know we got a lot of young viewers here on Pitcher List. If people remember just a few years ago, Jacob deGrom was absolutely unhittable when he was on the mound. Just his stuff just you couldn't even see it on the TV. It was just absolutely incredible what he was throwing up there. And so if he's pitching without that, it's going to force him to rely so much on his ability to locate and, mix his pitches together and mix speeds. And I know Jacob deGrom is a great pitcher, but I wonder if he has the ability to do that with such a limited arsenal, especially with declining velocity. He looked really hittable yesterday, allowing those 4 hits and 2 earned runs. So maybe deGrom is not as invincible as we remember him. Hopefully, though, he gets back on track. All right, now let's take a look at the notable relief pitching performances. We actually had a very notable one as Alex Vesia recorded a save for the Dodgers. That's notable because Tanner Scott recorded the first save for the Dodgers, and I didn't really have Alex Vesia penciled in as the second guy up for the Dodgers to get a save. We saw Kirby Yates get a hold in this one. I would have maybe suggested him as a guy to get a save, or maybe Scott to be back in there on the second day in the row. Maybe they wanted to take it easy on him early in the season. Vesia, though, is really underrated. PLV Darling always ranks super highly in that regard. Maybe he's somebody who can vulture some saves throughout the season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get 5 or 6 saves throughout the year, especially as the number 2 lefty in that bullpen. But that's Alex Vesia, first save of the season. Kirby Yates got a hold, and then Landon Knack vultured a win, and he actually looked pretty good, tossing 2 scoreless innings. He struck out a few guys. He's got great fastball shape with 19 inches of induced vertical break on his mid-90s four-seamer. And he also seemed to be shifting away from his slider, focusing more on his changeup and curveball. So maybe a shift in his pitch mix can allow him to really excel as a relief pitcher. That's Landon Knack. On the Cubs side, we saw Ryan Pressly make his Cubs debut. He pitched the 9th with the Cubs down by 3, and he showed some jitters walking 3 guys. We saw Porter Hodge pitch the 9th. I don't think we're going to see, or we saw him pitch the 8th. I don't think we're just going to see Pressly lose his job anytime soon. I think they're going to let him work things out, especially if he's, walked away unscathed from this one despite walking 3 batters. But Ryan Pressly, clearly the closer here, as he was used in the 9th, as you would expect a closer to in a game when you're trying to get them some work early in the season. All right. Now let's take a look at the games for tomorrow. Obviously, we have to go back to normal spring training games. My matchup of the day, though, we're going to stay on theme with a couple of Japanese pitchers squaring off. Kodai Senga versus Shinsuke Ogasawara of the Nationals. He is unlikely to make the opening day roster for the Nationals, but I am interested to see what he can do. Honestly, anybody coming from overseas, even if they're an American dude that goes overseas for one season, has a great year and comes back, I'm always excited to see what they can do, like Merrill Kelly or Eric Fetty. There was also a guy who I can't even remember right now that pitched for the Brewers a few years back, and I was so high on him when he was coming over just because he had so much success in the KBO or something, and came back and he was not good. But I always am excited to see, it's just that unknown factor of just something happened somewhere else. We're not really sure if it's real. Are they going to be able to repeat that here? We'll see that. We'll see if that's the case here with Ogasawara as he takes on his countrymate, Kodai Senga. But that'll do it for today's episode of the First Pitch Podcast. Make sure to head on over to pitcherlist.com to check out all of the great articles and features we have on the site. Also, sign up for PL Plus or PL Pro to gain access to the Discord and to support the Pitcher List staff. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Crumpler. Tune in live on YouTube tomorrow and every day for a new installment of the podcast. Trevor Huth will be back with you tomorrow and throughout the weekend. Give him a warm welcome as he makes his first pitch debut, and make sure to enjoy the day as we are blessed with another day of baseball.